What's up everybody, Couch Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Halo video. And in this video I'm going to be breaking down how to aim like an absolute god in Halo. Mechanical skill is one of the most important things that you could have in Halo Infinite if you want to have a high time to kill. So I'm going to be breaking down all the tips and tricks to achieve that godlike aim so you can dominate your opposition. Make sure to smash that like, subscribe if you don't want to miss out on any of the news, guides, and updates we have on Halo Infinite on this channel. But without further ado, let's jump to the video. Now the first thing that we need to talk about is time to kill. First off with shields, then with flesh. We've covered this in many videos, but after the shields are broken, any bullet will one tap in the head, and with the BR, 3 bursts and 2 bullets later will break their shields, and the last bullet in the last burst will be able to headshot, killing the enemy. Now, if you manage to do this with no wasted bullets, you're gonna get something called perfection, which means you killed an enemy as quickly as you possibly could without missing any shots, and it's definitely very satisfying. And as a general rule of thumb, you actually don't have to aim head level with every single shot you take, because shield health is going to be dealt the same amount of damage no matter if you shot them in the foot or you shot them in the head, and center of mass is going to be the easiest target. That being said, as you play in coordinated stacks with fellow teammates, spamming head level is going to be incredibly important, because if you're able to all shoot them at the same time, then one of you is going to be able to finish them off a lot quicker because you're all aiming head level and there's extra damage to go around. Now that being said, there's 2 fundamental types of aiming that you'll see in Halo Infinite: tracking based aim and flicking based aim. Tracking first, where you track the target as it moves through the air and you're keeping your crosshair on the target as much as possible, and then flick based shots, where you're literally swiping across your screen to hit tap shots. Now that being said, in general, tracking is going to be far more used in Halo because of that high amount of health, that high time to kill, but you can incorporate flicking, especially if that enemy is one shot, that enemy is that one shot to the head. Being able to flick across your screen and finish off a target that is quite a bit away from you but is low health, or that one tap, is definitely very important, and that's why flicking practice is still important as well. Now, different type of weapons are going to allow you to aim fundamentally different. For example, if a weapon has a single fire, so something like a shotgun, what you can do with it is you can jiggle out of a door frame, take a shot, and between or in between your shots, because there's a downtime before you can shoot again, you can unjiggle from the door. So jiggle out, shoot, jiggle back in. This allows you to peek out for a very small window where you're dealing damage, and then you're behind cover when you're not dealing damage. Unlike a weapon like an assault rifle that would have to fight in open space and consistently do damage, you're doing your damage in large chunks, allowing you to reveal yourself for a very small amount of time and still get that kill. But the aim is going to be a lot different, because you're typically going to want to aim center mass, and you're going to want to make sure to most likely flick to your target, because they may have moved position between your jiggle peaks of the door frame. Now, the next thing that we need to talk about is hit scan versus projectile weapons. Specifically, projectile are weapons that have a travel time. So when you throw them or shoot them, there is a delay between them actually hitting their target. Projectiles are also grenades. So regular grenades, sticky grenades specifically, or just projectile or things you're shooting like rocket launchers. And every single projectile has a certain amount of travel time, and the slower the projectile, the less of 100% certainty the projectile will hit. Let me give you a perfect example. Let's say that there's an enemy far away and you're trying to hit them directly with a rocket launcher, right? During its travel time, they can move to the left, they can move to the right, they could dodge it during its travel time. It's pretty quick, but it's not 100%. Now, if they're walking in a straight line and you shoot it as they're walking, that's a prediction, but they can still change directions last minute, jump, or whatever the case may be. This is why typically when you use a weapon with splash damage, you want to fire in a way that no matter where they move, it will still kill the enemy or damage them severely, and you already have your other weapons whipped out, whether it's a BR or whatever the case may be, to finish off a low target if it didn't fully kill that enemy. Now, the opposite of this is hit scan weaponry, where it literally scans. If your crosshair is on the enemy's head and you press that trigger, you are going to kill them instantly. It is a detection thing. There is no travel time. There is no room for failure. It is an either deal damage to them or no deal damage to them, no travel time, no whatsoever, and it requires less prediction and more reaction. So a great example of this would, let's say you hurt an enemy very bad, you threw a grenade there, and then you're holding a really tight angle to the left. So if an enemy backs up in that tight angle, you can hit them, kill them, finish them off, punish them right then and there. But if an enemy is only peeking for like a millisecond, a projectile weapon wouldn't possibly be able to travel that in time to punish them for that that little tiny microscopic second they peek you, even if they're at 1 HP. Now, the next up, we gotta talk about movement and aim. How does movement help your aim or hinder your aim? So first off, let's talk about jumping, because I think a lot of people love to jump in Halo, but it actually can be pretty bad to do, especially if you're up against certain weaponry. The one thing that if you're jumping with no abilities, you're in a fixed position, which means enemies are gonna be able to line up and track you as you fall. They know where you're in the air, they know where you're gonna land, and it's easy for someone that is skilled with something like a sniper rifle to line it up to where they are going to be able to hit you while you're in that fixed position. Now, you can counteract this if you jump in the air and midway through that jump, you have the strafe that you use midway, so you're kind of playing on the perception that you are going to be in a static motion when in reality you're not going to be. Now, on top of that, something that a lot of people will try to do is crouch spamming. Now, I'm going to explain in a little while why I think crouch spamming is not really that efficient, especially up against controller users, but in general, crouching can be a way to actually mess up an enemy's aim that is aiming head level. So if you're fighting a sniper user and you don't want to risk getting headshotted, you could technically crouch as you're spraying them. This alters your headshot hitbox, so it can be a really viable strategy, specifically when you are already shields broken and you're trying not to get sprayed in the head, because that's what enemies are trying to do. But keep in mind that the more you crouch spam, the more you're going to make it so that you are actually messing with your own accuracy as well, because you're crouching like crazy, your gun, your crosshairs moving like crazy. So it's just something to keep in mind. If it's going to hurt your aim, it's probably something that you shouldn't do if you have the advantage in the fight. Like the enemy has broken shields and you're pretty full, you don't want to be crouch spamming in that situation. Now I'm going to briefly talk about some of the weaponry, specifically weapons like a sniper. They can be really easily punished if enemies know where you are. They can spray you out, they can jiggle peek spray you and prevent you from scoping in. So it's really important to try to get an off angle on an enemy and try to finish them off before they realize you're there. Also note that if you're scoped in with the sniper, it is incredibly bright and enemies know that they're being looked at with that sniper if they look towards you. So it's really going to be very difficult to fight someone 1v1, especially a good player. If you have a sniper and they know where you are, they can jiggle BR spray you, push forward, jiggle BR spray you, push forward. And that would be the effective strategy that you need to do if you want to push a sniper rifle opponent. It's all about preventing them from zooming in and not giving them that option to snipe you in the freaking head and win the matchup just like that. Now, quite a few energy weapons have a certain level of tracking, which if a weapon has a tracking element, something like a needler that will track onto an enemy slightly, that is when you can move like a psychopath. Crouch spam, left, right, you can even jump sometimes, whatever you have to do, because you're moving sporadically, but it's not hurting your aim. Because the energy weapon is slightly locking on, you don't have to be perfectly accurate like the enemy, especially if you're cracked. You just want to move that headshot hitbox as much as freaking possible while dishing out as much of this tracking based damage as possible to the enemy. Now, of course, we got to talk about mouse versus controller. Now, I'm not doing a debate mouse versus controller. That's not really that important to me at all, but I do need to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of both and how you should probably change up how you're playing depending on what type of enemies you're going against or potential. So like the joint queue, for instance, you are, as a mouse and keyboard player, going to be going up against controller players. And after grinding both the solo duo mouse and keyboard only and the joint controller mouse hybrid to mid to high diamond, I do think that in general, spamming crouch is not going to work as well against controller. Their aim is more centralized, and on top of that, the slight tweaks to your headshot hitbox is not going to work as well compared to the slight amount of fixing that the aim assist does. So that's just something important to keep in mind, because while moving your head is actually instantaneous, so is the aim assist itself. So that's something that you need to keep in mind. It's not going to mess people up as much as it would against a mouse and keyboard user. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean I think that controller users have an advantage, because I really don't think that at all. I want to make that completely clear here. And mouse and keyboard users, I mean, there's just so many features that we have. I mean, it's just lines and lines of advantages as far as being on an actual computer, having extra movement, in my opinion, more sporadic movement, things like that. And you can overcome a lot of these disadvantages with more fluid movement across the map. So that's something that you need to keep in mind, and just in general, don't spam crouch as much. Now, speaking of mice, just as a side tidbit, I'm going to be doing another video that breaks down all of the things that you should be getting as a console or a PC user as far as the best setup you could have. But if you have a mouse as a PC user that is over 100 grams and huge with 1,000,000 buttons, you need to replace that immediately. As far as aim is concerned, the lighter the mouse typically is going to be better. The less buttons on your mouse is also going to be better. This means optimizing just the raw input of your hand as opposed to having all the flexibility of all the buttons on the mouse, because every time you press these buttons, you're going to be messing up your aim. A heavier mouse is going to have less direct input from your arm. It's going to put more pressure on your wrist and your fingers. Leave those gigantic mice for, you know, Dota or League of Legends, and get an FPS mouse for freaking Halo Infinite. But if you have any questions about this video, definitely let me know down below, and I'm going to be doing a lot more breakdowns in the future, breaking down a lot of these sections into pieces, because I'm really touching bare bones here, and there's just so much strategy involved in Halo that there's just a lot to freaking talk about. Definitely let me know if you have any questions down below. Thank you so much for coming by. Smash that like, subscribe. I love your faces, and I'll see you next time.